All right, and we are live. Welcome to the Escape. My name is Nick, and I have Nate and Doug with us today. And I think I'm starting something new. I'm calling it the Nerd Spotlight. And Doug's going to be our first victim for this. Doug is from Cross-Eyed Comics. He's an author and artist, creator, author. You do the whole thing, right? You've colored everything. And
Everything.
normally we've had Adam with us, but he's unable to make it because of work. So we got Nate filling in. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. So, like I said, Doug, lay it down. What's your nerd cred, man? What are you into?
Oh man, uh, being a father's been pretty cool because it lets me relive all the stuff that I kind of swept under the rug when I got together with my wife. So back hard into Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, all the Avengers and DC animated universe and stuff is pretty near and dear to me. Going back to when I was a kid, same thing. Grew up with Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles. It's real life imitating itself right now. I was a big Spawn fan growing up. So it was when everybody else.
So you're a
Go ahead.
child of the '90s. Yeah, I
Yeah,
sense a very similar timeline here. Yes.
yeah, for sure. I actually have I have a joke that like a variant cover that I want to do, like an alternate cover for one of my next issues of Chiasm, where it's the like kid from Poltergeist, except for it's like my character sitting way too close to the TV because as a legally blind child, that's what I used to do. And then like anybody who knows my series will get the joke, and anybody who doesn't is just gonna think of this like a callback to a horror movie.
Very nice. So yeah, yeah. One of the things that this is the 40th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles and a bunch of awesome franchises from the '80s. I think Transformers. There's a few other ones, but like,
Mhm.
and I'll get into it later because I just went to a Comic Con last weekend and they had like turtle guys there, like early turtle guys, and I just think like bring it into like indie realm. I think like the turtles kind of have to be like the gold standard for like indie stuff, right?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. They were the first ones to like chase down the action figures. And, like they had to prove to people why goofy characters were going to be like somehow redeemable in pop culture. And it kind of seems like as they as they gave up on it being a thing is when it started to like really pick up and turn into something that they couldn't control. So it's pretty sick.
Yeah, and because like I said, I just sat in the panel and it was like guys who were there like who were brought in like the first wave after Laird and Eastman and it was they I just look at like they never really sold out. They never went to DC. They never went to Marvel. They kind of jumped around, like I said, because once getting something gets to a certain size, like you can't do it in house the whole time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
just get back to like even when going to the movies, like it was the first independent movie that was like the highest gross
Yeah.
independent movie for a long time, and it was just like I just think I was like dealing with Nate and David and all the indie guys come across. It's like they really got to kind of be like, yeah, that's the goal. Like really
Hmm.
being able to hold on to your own stuff and really
Yeah.
control it as much as you can.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see is like, and I wouldn't know because I haven't done any of the research, but like if they ever shop TMNT two, like the big two, to see what the like conversation was, because I feel like early on it would have been like, oh, we don't have room for anything like that on in our roster, and then like later, like after that, they've been like, oh, I actually had an idea where this might fit perfectly. At which point, like the guys as their own self-driving machine would have just been like, "Nah, we're good, thanks." Like that's kind of the dream too, right? Is to be like, you know, to want to be out there and then to like not have to rely on anybody. Um, the thing for like the way that I've created my books is like for Chiasm, which is a sci-fi retelling of my life as a child of cancer survivor swapped chemotherapy with alien molecules. Um, it's like it's such a personal story to me that it's something that like I'm always gonna have to write and nurture and like maintain and kind of like guide along the lines of what I want to tell. Whereas with Super Wicked White Cell Squadron, my all ages project, it's such a fun callback to like Captain Planet and Power Rangers and stuff that like it'd be really cool to get to a point where I could just be like a creative director and
I
just
love
kind of
Nate.
and just like let anybody show me the art, be like, yeah, that's cool, as long as nobody says anything bad and everybody feels like they're part of the team, you know.
Doug, can we put the Super Wicked White Skull Squadron up on the screen?
Hit it.
Hit it.
Nate Price gets full editorial credit for Super Wicked White Skull Squadron too.
Hooray for me!
So it's pretty cool. It's been a really neat couple of years of like doing everything from all ages to, edgy, like, custom out and having fun stuff.
Oh, he's got we're kind of on the cover right now. So, you want to talk about what because I just read up on your Kickstarter and everything. I think it's a great story. You want to explain the Super Wicked White Cell Squadron to us?
Sure, man. Yeah. The Super Wicked White Cell Squadron is my loving call to Sentai action books, and it's drawn off of the experiences that I had as a child in the hospital, and designed specifically for the intention of getting into children's hospitals, so that you can just kind of show that there's a creative release for any of the frustration you might be feeling, and that like everything that you're dealing with can kind of be a callback in the future. Like the giant robot there is called the MRI. But instead of what kids in the hospital might know as the magnetic resonance imaging scanner, this stands for the enormous mechanical assault robot interceptor class. And it's all about building like that image of like, Rashid, you ready for your scan? And like Rashid hops out of his bed because he's stoked to go like get in the tube and gear up and like feel like a member of the squadron for the next 45 minutes. And then the characters are they're all named after doctors that I dealt with through my medical career. One of the cool parts about it has been being able to go back to the doctors that I dealt with and, saying thank you so much and showing them the art that I've created with them in mind. And, it's been a really fulfilling experience 30 years later to go back and, revisit kind of the places where I spent a lot of time as a kid.
No, it's an amazing, like I said, it's kind of going over the Kickstarter, as much for the bio. Yeah, you've got an incredible story yourself, and then also, trying to give back as much as you are, because your ultimate goal is to get not just sell comic books, but get the comic books into hands of kids in hospitals, right?
Totally. Yeah. And one of the mentalities that I have adopted is that like, you go to some shows and like the collector's vision. I said that like some like ultimate collectors are like Terminators, right? They really like scan a table to see what's valuable or not, and then they just kind of walk on to the next thing and go to the next table. But there's these like elite group of like really enthusiastic people of a certain like young age, and you can chat with them and find out what they're interested in and show them your projects. And like I think that if you can connect to a younger audience with something that they can jump in at an early age with, then they can follow your growth as a creator. And it's a really cool way of building long time connection with a larger fan base. Because the guy who's just out there to steal a Charizard off of a 7-year-old, he doesn't care about my books. And I'm okay. I'm not making them for him. But
hey, don't talk about me, man. Come on.
I'm gonna call Nate out like that. Stealing Charizards.
But so it's, and then like my other projects are a little bit more like edgy and fun, and everybody can access them and stuff. But getting books into the hospital, it's a cool way of like doing the work as I climb the ladders of success, and setting myself up for a future of like, just spreading goodwill as I do the work to propel my legacy further and further.
No, that's awesome. It's so funny because saying that is talking about the Comic Con stuff, because it goes both ways, right? Because like I've run into guys who one of the guy we wandered over to his booth because he had the same name as our grandson. And my wife collects one comic book, and he happened to be the artist who did the comic book. So I'm like, hey, you know that one random book that you collect? This is the guy who I was like, what are the odds? And then so we started following him, and then he actually moved up. Now he's on doing pencils for TMNT, and it's just like so every time I go to that con, I go out of my way to go say, hey man, like congratulations, that's awesome. And then there's the other guys who uh and it's such a hard, it's got to be, well, actually know the experience because I actually sat in and worked a con, and just seeing the like, Doug, there's just certain people when they're at a con, it seems like you're bothering them.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, I dig your art, man. I want to give you money. So just be nice to me just for 10 seconds. That's all I need.
It's such a strong point because it's something that I really champion. So like the quick timeline is that in 2022 I did one small convention that's got a lot of good momentum going right now, and it's a little bit west of me. And then I did a couple art shows, and like the bug was there that I knew that like I could be good at this, and I wanted to make it better and better. So then in 2023, I worked in Indianapolis, Edmonton, Buffalo. I did the same show that's growing momentum in Vaughan. And then I did a few more art markets, and I got to do a couple of events at Children's Hospital. And, I got I really started picking it up. And the philosophy that I was able to cultivate through that is just like, if you can't be approachable, then there's no point in being there. And I've developed a really cool fan first experience where like people can put on a pair of like these pinhole glasses. This is where I dig in my bag of stuff, and they can like try to do a sketch or read a book, with the simulation of like how my eyes work. So let me see.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I see this.
It's cool. And so I've gotten I bought 25 pairs because I just did an art class, my son's third grade class for you Yankee Doodles out there, and because we say grade 3, you guys say third grade. Yeah, so I've started to like create like a fan experience of like trying to draw like Doug Knight. And I've got like the 4-foot cardboard standee where you can take your selfie with the squadron as a member of the squadron, and and like I also thrive on selling to the people that are just like following their kids around, regretting ever letting them leave the house looking like that, and it's like, and in the same sentence, like when I'm in Artist Alley, dude, I bring the boombox, so we got music going all weekend, and like I get on a good basis with my. What's that?
You're creating a vibe.
Yeah, man. So I got Scholar blasting all weekend, and I learned from every show. Like when I did Indianapolis with Mark Bernal from Lesser Known Comics, like it was a really cool first experience doing a huge show. But like both of us were looking at the ceiling at one point, realizing that all we were listening to was like geek chatter and like industrial ventilation.
Yeah.
I was like, this white noise is like, I wouldn't do this in like the most insane therapy. So that was my augmentation, is bring music, and people were drawn to the table, and same thing, like you see so many incredibly talented artists that are so afraid of the people that are walking by, and I think to myself, why'd you even spend the $400 to be here? This is your chance, man. You want to be seen, like make it snazzy, one of my big foibles at first was people walking past the table, and I was like, hey man, how you making out today? And like for me, it was just like asking how someone's doing. And Mark's like, people think you're asking if you want to kiss them. I was like,
on me, sir.
Yeah. Let me fix that one. So a small communication adjustment, and became a little bit more personable for it. And yeah, man. So it's been really cool. Just getting more stuff, more stickers, more books, more promo items, and just creating like a really fun experience, so that when I go to conventions, even if I'm not at a pro table, because those are apparently like harder than gold to find, it's still something where people are like, oh man, Cross-Eye Comics is here, and the buzz is there, and Lesser Known Comics is there with them, and like, I think Lesser Known Comics as a collective is developed like this crazy like punk rock kind of vibe where like the party is where we go. So it's been a really cool couple of years of developing those traits.
It's awesome that you have that awareness because, like, I helped, none of the Chihuahuas came up, did Motor City Comic Con, and we helped them for the weekend, and uh, right in the middle of Artist Alley, and we were, talking to our neighbors and stuff, and I was just, maybe I'm the weird one, but I'm just trying to be like friendly and like
Mhm.
kind of create that welcoming thing, and then, as you kind of get to know the people next to you, and be like, tell me the war stories. Tell me like your terrible experiences. Like, dude, we got in fights. We got, he was just going down the list, and I'm just like, you're all there to make money. Like, what? Yeah,
Yeah,
I always have the, rising tide lifts all ships type of mentality.
yeah.
If everybody's cool, like, we'll all, help each other out. And apparently, that's not the way it always goes.
No, I guess not.
One thing I would say, Doug, is uh, start writing emails to the cons before you go, and just tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do, and see if you can one, become a guest, or like if we started doing it is trying to put on panels,
Mhm.
which then they might comp your table, and like makes things a little bit easier, I think. But I don't know if
Yeah,
you're
that's awesome advice. Yeah, Adrian Kolerick from Chicovy, he got his first few pro tables this year, so he was super stoked. And I was like, oh man, that's a good idea. To his credit, he was able to get his book published with, I believe, Scout. So it carries a little bit more weight when it comes to like the Fan Expo applications. But the other thing that I've learned is that the non-fan expo events are oftentimes a lot nicer to reach out to the event promoters and stuff. The only catch 22 to that is I would love to do a panel and stuff, so I'm happy to throw that out there. But because these guys are all working so hard to put on these huge events, I'm happy to pay for the Artist Alley experience because I know that I'm contributing to the success of
yeah.
their show. So yeah, it's a great point of advice that you just gave me. Thank you.
Trying to be helpful.
Yeah, it was interesting because so at the show I was just at, so they had Jim Lawson, Steve Levine, Dan Berger, like real early Turtle guys,
Mhm.
and I was just kind of, they were awesome just to talk to, and I heard they're like, hey, are you going? Because the show I was at, it was just a real small show over in Warren, just outside of Detroit, and I was shocked that these guys were going to be there, and they're like, "Oh, are you going to be at the Motor City Comic Con, which is our area's
Mhm.
big show?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I mean, no one's asked us. We'd show up, obviously." But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm always interested in see how that works out. Where it's like, do you always have to reach out? And obviously, once you get to a certain point where they're going to reach out to you, but I always wonder, there's that dynamic where like how much, you know, certain shows, how much work do you have to put in? Do you have to like, you know, 'cause I remember with Motor City Comic Con, you had to apply and they had to accept you and that stuff. And there's probably shows where
Mhm.
you're like, hey, I'll pay for the table, versus other shows where, what's the certain things you've run into just being an indie guy.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool point. So, obviously, something that you look forward to is becoming infamous enough that people want to scout you to be the butt that fills their seats, and that'll be cool to get to. But right now, I think in line with what I was speaking about, like the dude who runs the show in Vaughan, Ontario, him and his brother, this is their um, fourth year of running the show, excuse me, and each year it gets bigger. They went from like 1,500 attendees during like post COVID to 3,500 to 5,500. So like every year they're growing. And I reach out to him. I say, hey, this is what I got going on this year. This is who I can bring with me. We can do a panel, whatever. And he's like, sick. The table's like super low cost, or I'll comp it for you. So it's about, and I did an interview with him the other night, and we talked about developing a growing relationship, and something like that's really cool because then that's how you get to like when Vaughan is the second biggest Toronto or Ontario show. I've got a spot guaranteed because I did the work to build the relationship. With Fan Expo, it's such a like ambiguous curtain where you just fill out this pro application, hope that whoever like muffles through the paperwork sees you and is like, oh yeah, he's good, or no, and then they don't even tell you that you're not like professional enough for their
It's the
table.
worst.
So you're left like hanging, and then like maybe you get an email a month before the show you weren't prepared for saying show up and have fun. So it's like
thanks.
it's yeah, but then like the shows like Nickel City and Buffalo or Niagara Falls or Hamilton, like the dudes that run and promote those shows, like you send them an email, they're back to you in a week or two, and you send them an idea, and they give you a yes or a no, and like you feel like you're actually being heard and like, included. So I just think it's a matter of like figuring out. Lesser Known Comics has the slogan "treating artists like humans," and it's like as a human artist, you need to know how you feel like being treated. So it's like it's cool to fill out the application and then hope that you're a pro or whatever, but like it's kind of like spawnuary, right? Like there's probably a lot of people throwing their hat in the ring, and even if you know what your value is, if you don't have enough followers, it might not shake out in the end. So it's and like to tie into that, I have a friend, and he's very good friends with one of the gentlemen who like coordinates the pro table assignments at Fan Expo. And my friend's like, oh, you should reach out to him and say, you know me. And I'm just like, it's a cool idea, but what's dropping your name going to do for me if I don't have like the body of work to back up what I want to do? Like I don't want to call in favors. I want to be worthy of like the position that I have to like work to build, right? So it's about knowing where you want to be and what your trajectory is. And once people start calling you and you get those opportunities and sick, and hopefully my wife isn't so tired of me doing conventions at that time that she's cool with me going at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, and I'll just speak into my experience. So is Fan Expo, is that like the big show for the Toronto area?
They're a big conglomerate that does shows all over. That's where we went to when we went to San Francisco as Fan Expo.
Right. Well, and that's kind of how like Motor City Comic Con was. They were part of whatever banner name, and I know I think that was they might have been part of Wizard when Wizard was doing a bunch of cons. But for me, it was just so nice to go to a small, just comic book convention.
Yeah.
Where I could go and just actually dig into booths and dig into some comics instead of having the quote unquote pop culture con where it's a whole ours is it's over in Novi and it's in this gigantic place and it's like a couple football fields worth of just area to go to. I remember Adam and I were like, just nice to like take a couple loops, took a few minutes. It was just instead of having to fight through thousands of people. Do you prefer kind of the whole pop culture events, or do you prefer more just the actual like comic conventions?
I think that like it's really interesting when you're at a table and you're questioning what you're doing there. Like you're watching I
think we've all been there.
Like, and that's when I challenge myself to do better, right? Like, don't look at it as a negative scenario. Look at it as an opportunity to convert some mongophones to comic book fans, right? And the same thing, like some collectors shows where you're there and they're just there for like exclusive Funkos and rookie Peyton Mannings. You realize that
right.
they don't care what art you're doing if you're not signing it and whatever. So but I take that as I'm a very headbutt the brick wall kind of person. So if I'm in those scenarios, I see it as a chance to if maybe no one's going to buy a book, then look for an opportunity to network with somebody. But I think that the really cool thing that happened last year was that my wife came with me to Nickel City, and never having been to a convention before, she helped me set up. She took great photos, and then she went back to the hotel room and got blasted so that because we didn't have our kids and she could enjoy herself. And then she came back and she's like, hey, She's like, ET's over there. Should I go get my picture with them? Like, follow your heart, man. Go do it. That's what and then, like, and then like an hour later, she comes back with a smile on her face, like, this is the most insane thing. She's like, this is so much fun. You know, I've met all these cool vendors. She got like there's a plush toy vendor that was there that was selling the Care Bears like Hugs and Tugs, and hers was lost when she was a little girl. So the vendor gave it to her because they like felt so connected to her. And she's like, this doesn't happen like in the real world. I'm like, well, that's the beauty of these shows. And so I think that like, you know, where the comic book shows, I find, you know, from time to time can be a little stuffy. You know, they feel like some people feel like because they're there, they have to be all about the comics and you can't deviate or anything. But I think the fan expos or the pop culture conventions, I think they breed a spirit of like individuality that like, you know, really any other time of the year only kind of comes around during like the pride festivals and stuff, you know, like where people are encouraged to be themselves and who they are and what they are. Like, you know, fan expos or like the pop culture conventions are that from 30 years ago, because it's just people show up dressed as, you know, like you see just as many dudes dressed as Sailor Moon as you do, you know, girls dressed as Tuxedo Mask. Like, so there's no limits there, and everybody's just having fun and celebrating what they like. So I think it's a pretty cool, diverse group of experience seekers.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because you know, you came back to you like creating a vibe. You get certain people who are just like, oh, look at all these weirdos. It's like, dude, they're just letting their freak flag fly. Like this is the one of the few handful of weekends they get to do like whatever they want to do, and it's just like, and the same thing kind of with my wife. My wife is, you know, she loves like Star Trek and all that. So if they have Star Trek guests, you know, we try and you know, meet up with them and, you know, get pictures taken, that type of thing. But yeah, it's it's such a weird, you know, why you know, just as nerds in general, and especially with, you know, how popular comic book movies have been. Like you would think like we're kind of past all that, but you know, there's still a lot of like, oh, look at this. It was like, dude, we're talking about comic books, man. Let's not take it too seriously here.
You paid $80 to get into this place too, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just because they're not doing the thing that you like, it's like, well, are we still in high school? Like,
yeah.
The best is when you see a cosplayer out in public that recognizes you, but you have no idea who they are because they're not in cosplay. We were somewhere, my wife and I, and the guy comes up. He's like, "Remember me?" I'm making like a punk rock sign here, Doug. He's like, "Remember me?" And we're like, "No, we don't."
No, no, sir, I don't.
He had dressed up like Gene Simmons from Kiss.
Okay.
But he had a wig and makeup, and you know, like when we see him in public, he must have. I think he recognized my wife. My wife is way more recognizable than I am. Remember me? Like,
no, buddy. No, sir. But also, like you said, but at the cons, man, you'll see some of the coolest stuff. Like, you know, and I know we're not going to get political, but you know, there's so many things that so many people are upset about, and you just sit there and just people watch, and you just see, like, there was one, you know, all the cosplayers. There was an entire family, and they, you know, they were black, but they all cosplayed as the X-Men. You know, I was like, that's so awesome. Like, you know, that they're just like, these are our favorite characters, and we dressed, you know, we got our kid as a little Wolverine, you know, and this our daughter Storm, and you know, I'm just like, you just see such cool stuff. I'm just like, that's so awesome, you know.
Yeah, I have a few anecdotes to that note. I think it was Indianapolis. They had Soundwave walking around.
Yep.
And so it was like a 14-foot transformer just cruising the con floor. And
is that the guy that does the awesome cosplay? Because I know there's a guy that I follow on Instagram. His Soundwave is amazing.
It's like it's on stilts. Like he has to have like somebody guiding him. So that was really cool. And then I think it was Buffalo. They had a Death Eater that was like floating around and like legit like 16 feet Grim Reaper up in the air, that like, and they had like a really like well concealed stilt system and stuff. So that was really cool. In Buffalo as well. Well, okay, so there was another family dressed as the Suicide Squad, and so or like Batman villains, and so Bane was the dad. And when I tell you that like they couldn't cast a more perfect Bane in the movies, like this guy was so large. I looked at Mark and I'm like, that guy could crush your face if like just by looking at you. He was like it was like just to the perfect dimension, like boulder shoulders, like the mask looked like it was suffocating his eyeballs. Like it was so well done, man. And then the other one was in Buffalo. They had the Ninja Turtles walking around. I'm sure you probably have seen those guys before. And as they were doing the round, I was next to my artist alley corner was next to Jim Starling and Ken Lashley. And so Mikey walks by. What's up, Mikey? Yeah. Donnie walks by. Leo walks by. Well, Raph walks by. I say, hey, Raph, calm down. And he says, what'd you say to me? I said, Raph, calm down. And so Raph and I got into like a full-on shouting match. And I was like, hey, you have a good day. And I gave him a fist bump, and he kept walking. Well, he walks past, and Jim Starling's looking over like.
What was that?
And he's like, do I have to call security? I was like, nah, man, we're good.
Well, and that's the funny, because there are cosplayers who are like, they're in character, you know,
Yeah.
and that's awesome to have. But also, like, anytime like I see it, you know, anybody who just puts that much level of detail, I just go, dude, you look amazing. And it's
Yeah.
thank you. Like, that's all they want. And it's just that little, like, you know, that recognition of how much work they put into their stuff. I was like, you look awesome. You're killing it. And there's like,
Yeah, there's the game of maximum effort versus minimum effort. So when it gets like really slow, you look at somebody with like like there's like the person that's wearing like the Deadpool hoodie, and it's like minimum effort. But then the person dressed as Deadpool with like the Pikachu outfit and walks past me, like maximum effort.
Right, right.
You talk about that with like your table mates or whatever, right? You don't like say to the person walking by, hey, nice minimum effort costume.
Like, nice hoodie, dude.
Yeah.
Nice try. Nice try.
Yeah, but it's a really fun. Or same like when it's like really slow. I get there's an episode of Family Guy where Peter Griffin did does Axel F where like
Right,
and he's like doing like the and when for whatever reason when it gets real slow at conventions, that song pops into my head. So he's just walking, like, watch people like dawdle by, and then like when you've got no coffee in your system and you haven't made a sale for an hour, that's when the Peter Griffin comes out, and you have to start making fun.
Right. It's funny because going maximum effort, like, I am not a cosplayer at all. Like, I would totally be the guy in the hoodie, be like, this is as max effort as it gets for me.
Yeah. Well, and I had alluded to like the dad following their children around, just like asking what he's done to like deserve that experience. And I've been tattooing for 15 years. So one of the arts that you develop out of that is learning how to talk about everything, like where you guys don't step on politics. If somebody comes over to me and starts, bitching about whatever stance they have on something, I'll listen, because I think that person just needs to talk. But like, I'll form enough of an opinion to like navigate out of like tremulous waters. But like, I'll talk about sports. I'll talk about, history. I'll talk about regional issues, like everything, because I think that like sometimes like grumpy dad just wants to talk about his 67 Chevelle because he just got it detailed and it looks freaking sick, So,
Right.
so it's like, it's cool to pick like the grumpy punk rocker out of the crowd and hook them up with a free patch, or I went to an event at one of my favorite local comic book shops, where I'll be appearing for a free comic book day on the first weekend of May at Wayside Comics in Newmarket, Ontario. And the dude who owns it, Omar, is running these like mini cons every week. So radio personality that I grew up listening to is the writer for the book Dead Romans. So he was there, so I wanted to show up and give him a copy of the Apollo City punk rock anthology, because I have a story in that, and I just like gave it to him. I was like, listen, dude, big part of my childhood. Thanks for being an influence to me, and take the book. And he's like, nah, man, I can't do that. Like, let me buy it off of you. So he bought it off of me. And I told the shop owner later, he's like, you sold the guy that was a guest at my show.
He insisted.
But it's again, it's part of like. Go ahead.
I was saying he insisted, so yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
He
but
donated.
yeah, yeah, you're showing up and you never know. Like it's really cool to see what you can um, make out of every opportunity that comes your way.
Well, and it's basically how Nate and I met. We were just on, Instagram or YouTube. He's like, "Hey, would you review our comic?" I'm like, he's like, "What would it take to review our comic?" I was like, "Ask." And he's like, "I'll send it to you." I was like, "No, I'm not that guy. I'm not like that." I was like, "No, I'll buy an issue. It's no big deal." I believe in
Mhm.
supporting indie artists, indie comics. Yeah. So, and
Yeah,
from there, yeah, we're friends now. So
that's where I'm a little different from you, Doug. I will go ask everyone everything. Do you
take my
like prices?
book. Take it.
And just yeah,
But some
I storm down every door
you
that I
go.
can.
But I mean, like it's that's where your art comes in, right? Like there's I'm involved like I'm a partner of a project called the Tubiac Maniac now. And it's by a YouTube channel called the RP Show, and they're both dudes who later in life experienced legal.
Oh, you froze up. Are you there, Doug?
And
Oh, oh, hold on. You froze
Yeah,
up for a
you
second.
skipped out for a second.
Yeah, go back a second.
You said
We've
that
lost him. He's
that's me
glitchy.
buffering.
you
That's
said
me.
the
That's me
RP
buffering.
guys. You said the RP guys is the last I heard.
Yeah. Okay. So, so they experience legally blind adulthood because of their retinitis pigmentosa. So I'm doing the artwork for this comic book. It's like Shazam meets oh my god, how do I pitch it? It's like Shazam meets Daredevil, or it's like it's the blind character. Every time the kid picks up his cane, he becomes like the superhero. So we're having a lot of fun doing that. But it's one of the gentlemen is in the UK, the other dude's in Connecticut. And the guy in the UK, Steve, is like a project manager for a big company. He's like, so this is how we have to structure things, and this is what we need to look at, and this is our targets. And if we don't fund this much money, then it's not worth doing. And then the other dude, Mike, is just really charismatic and good at social media stuff. So I think that like when you find these dudes that like necessary writers, um, like you guys have this like ability of like doing the work that the artist doesn't have the time to do, which is knocking down the doors and asking questions and doing stuff. And like, if you come to a project and that's what you're willing to commit and you can like contribute that means so much to the guys that are sitting there like, I don't want to input this information on a website. This seems tiring. I just want to draw. So it's you're doing the Lord's work, Nate.
I felt bad when you were talking about waiting for them to contact you, because I'm the guy. I'm like emailing everyone. I email the guy's mom at like 4 a.m. I'm like, your son runs the Phoenix Fan Fusion. Can you talk to him about letting me in? I'm going to send you a copy of Night of the Chihuahuas.
It's like, I know you go to this coffee shop at this time. I know where you live. Get me an answer.
For real.
It's the art of the schmooze, and I do have to get better at that, because I know that like once you start knocking on doors. I read a book about it. Where it's talking about like how when you call an office of like an executive, you ask for them by their first name, and then like you do everything you can to avoid telling their assistant what you're calling in regards to and stuff. Like it's funny, there's like these actual tactics for like really asserting yourself and getting results out of communication.
What I do when I call comic shops, I try to research who the owner or the buyer is, and I just ask for them directly. And I will get some gatekeepers sometimes, but it's proving better over time. They're like, "Oh, sure. Can I say who's calling?" I'm like, "Nathan." Of course, it's me.
All right. Hey, Doug, let's get back to your comic here. So let's get a little bit more. So we know who the heroes are. Who are our bad guys?
So Emperor Lamora is your ambiguous weird big shot caller galactic queen, just kind of wants to corrupt the universe. I put more focus on her emissary Malagrox, just because he's the fun kind of purpley symbiotic looking cancer slug thing that I can draw over and over again. And then in the second issue, I introduced Big Bad Busy Boss Bee. I'm obviously a fan of alliteration, and this was just my chance of like, you know, writing a fun character that made fun of like Ryobi tools and you know, kind of having fun that like dads would get, you know, when they read the book. And like easy characters, like I don't have to go deep on these guys, you know. You see them, they look bad, they are bad. You know, in the second issue here, like after the big kaiju rumble, you know, Big Bad Busy Boss Bee ends up becoming like a little helper of the squadron because they respect how he ran his project, you know. So it's like it kind of shows like kids going through crap that you can be a dickhead to the people, but if there's a redeeming quality, then someone's going to see that and respect you for it. The little red weird one-eyed monsters, they're called woolly galoobers. And so the callback to that is when I was a kid and my sisters and I had wicked bad allergies. So I don't know if like as parents, have you guys ever seen that like look that like collects in the corner of your kid's eyes and like they go all red and like I can't see. My mom used to like my mom would dig those out of the corners of our eyes and like, oh, look at that woolly galoober. And so I just thought it was like the perfect way of like describing like just nasty slime. Like it says it all in the name. Like a woolly galoober just looks like it's squishy and like invasive and like
it's a very like yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
The name, you get the,
Nick, if you could scroll down a ways, there's I love a lot of these things. The one with the lighthouse, a lot of the panels and pages, but I don't know. I didn't want you to. There's the selfie that got me. He's trying to take a selfie when they're fighting the bad guys.
It's funny when other people say it.
Yeah, very
keep going.
2020s of
keep going.
Yeah, well, and that was like the idea of like how many kids just lose their focus when they're doing something, you know.
Oh, this one, I love this page. He posted this in the LKC channel a while ago, and I loved it, and I love it in the book. And I also Doug doesn't know, but I've saved every picture he's posted in the LKC thing. Yes, I'm your stalker as well.
It's a great panel, especially we are Port Huron, so we're right on the water, and we have one of the oldest lighthouses in Michigan. So yeah, I love that stuff.
That's sick. We the sidebar to that, I took my family to Sauble Beach out on Port Erie, Lake Erie. And the same thing, they've got like crazy old lighthouses and stuff. So it was really cool to reference that. But yeah, I think like the cool part about like this page is it's so out of context in terms of like the brightness and like the humor of the rest of the book that like it goes from like that fun book to like that, oh, and stuff got real. And then, like, you know, you have those situations in life where that's what happens, right? Like everything is good and then like snap your ankle and then you got to like deal with 6 weeks of rehab and stuff. So so I just think like the juxtaposition of dropping the really heavy like kaiju in the ocean was like a really necessary part of the book.
I like the scale too with the lighthouse, and you can get the gist of the size.
Yeah, the whole composition of it is awesome.
Well, thanks, fellers.
You don't know it, buddy.
Anything else you want to highlight there, Nate? Or
and if you go back up, there's the part where the when Busy Boss Bee, right here, right, go back, when the kid's getting his boba. Is that right? Is he eating boba?
Yeah.
He's like, his mom wants him to leave, but he's like, if you think I'm leaving after having gone through this treatment while I'm enjoying, what is it? Blueberry mint chip black with triple tapioca.
Yeah. You know, and like the real deep stuff there is kind of like you know, the preposterous nature of like the kaiju battle going on while that little kid's drinking the bubble tea after having survived that. You know, if you look deeper into it, is it like actually the battle that the kid went through and now he's genuflecting it or reflecting on it while he's enjoying like a little bit of rain at the, you know, the Ferris wheel at the carnival. So I think like, you know, when I when I can drop the little pearl of like, think about it, you know, to people. Um,
Well,
you know, it could,
and just reading the panel, the kid's enjoying it while also on his anti-nausea medication,
yeah,
because of everything that he's going through. He's like, yeah, like, no, 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 I'm staying here. I'm good. I've got everything I need in this little world right now. Like, leave me alone.
yeah, yeah. And you know, being young, going through that stuff, appreciating like the really simple stuff. Like, so when I was a kid, those anti-nausea medication, my mom used to give it to me hidden in Oreos, like I was a dog. um and so like I would eat it, and like that with the combination of like what the chemo did to my taste buds ruined Oreos for me until I was like 20. And then I became like a, you know, overweight 20-year-old, and I ate my first Oreo. I was like, oh my god, what is this?
I've been missing out.
You evil fiend.
Yeah. But yeah, relativity on a different scale, man. Like, you know, I want a parent to read that with a child and like kind of be like, because maybe it's gonna like be triggering, but at the same sense, they're gonna realize that like their kid's laughing at it because it's something that like, you know, a stand-up comedian can't talk about, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's perspective. It adds a level of perspective that who's someone who hasn't had to go through. I was like, oh, like shit. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's something that speaks you know, to the people who are actually going through it. Be like, oh, you get it, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially for you know, not a kid who spent a lot of time in the hospital. Of at least the only time I did was because I hurt myself a lot as a kid. But
Yeah.
yeah, the kids who are going through this day in and day out feel like, oh, someone gets it, and I think
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, there wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go,
I
Nate,
just want to
go.
say I don't want
Just
to
everybody
lose
talk
it.
at once.
And then in second
Everybody
grade,
solo.
second grade, I puked over the balcony. I just want to say that other piece of art that I turned in, the one you shared with me earlier, Doug. You said Will Jack. Is it Will Jack? Eat Your Heart Out, Will Jack, or Alex Ross, or
Oh yeah. Alex Ross.
Is that the one
I'm swinging high there.
Yeah, as someone who recently got into painting, because okay, all right, Doug, this is how stupid I am. When like I was into collecting comics, that's kind of when Alex Ross came in. I had this very snooty
Yeah.
like, that's not comic book art. That blah blah blah. And
It's
just like,
hypermedia.
yeah, it's just so ignorant. And now I look
Yeah.
back, I was like, the man was creating gorgeous works of art, and me as a snot-nosed teenager was just
Yeah.
rejecting it out of hand. And I'm like, what an idiot. And now I look back, and now I'm, like I said, trying to do my best Alex Ross impersonation with,
Yeah.
with my acrylics or whatever. But I was just like,
Yeah.
so is that the one you sent me, Nate? We want to pull that one up?
Yeah, I just didn't want to. I really appreciate that. It gave me several ideas. I said Will Jack, but there's I don't know if you know who Will Jack is, and I don't remember Alex Ross off the top of my head, but I like the kind of the dreamy superhero look. I have a project that I want to. That's not a dreamy superhero project, but I want to make a character look like a dreamy superhero.
Sick.
Yeah,
I'll show you. I was excited to get home from work because I'm cruising on it.
Oh, nice.
Oh
Yeah, I
yeah.
still gotta fix that face up a little bit, but I'm happy with how it's coming along.
That's great.
Is that
Thank you.
is that marker and paint, or what is that?
That's it's liquid acrylic, but I treat it like a watercolor. And then I try to get away with as much lining as possible with the number 2 round. And then I'll go in after and I'll do like the Poscas and the Prismacolor, accents and stuff. But I like challenging myself. I try to do whatever cover I have time for. I like to do by hand because I think that it's a really cool way of like paying the respect to my titles by like doing the work. I create my interiors digitally. and it's really good because obviously it's the one-man workforce. I can letter, I can do everything on my iPad. But I think that, like, saying that I'm a legally blind artist is kind of like it's kind of a bullshit statement if I'm not willing to back it up by saying that, like, I did my time on paper and I still have what it takes to, like, throw down, for hours at a time, and like, and everything that I do gets better still, even as I get older. So I just think that there's a level of authenticity that, like, comic collectors will really appreciate, later on in the as they get into my stuff.
So, and just nerding out art wise. So, do you just water down your acrylics to get it down like that, or to make it just kind of like that nice light layer over it, or?
Yeah,
You
so
can
I
sign
do.
up to his YouTube channel and pay, and he'll teach you all the secrets of the night.
Hey, no, man.
All right, since
No,
we're
no.
showing off, like I said, trying
Let's
to get
see.
into it. So this is of Voldemort I did for my niece, and it's
Sick,
just
man.
acrylics, and it's actually a couple panels, but yeah.
So the liquid acrylic is really cool because it transfers nice on the watercolor paper and the multimedia paper. So I just use this FW stuff.
I just use
And
your basic acrylic stuff. So
yeah, and so it's really cool because you can water it down. When I was learning how to tattoo, I learned how to do a form of watercolor painting called spit shading, and that's where, like, instead of using a cup of water like a civilized person, you just gob your face full of, like, your brush full of spit, and then you slap it down and you paint with it. And so
isn't that how artists got lead poisoning back in the day?
probably. And
Food
so
every night.
so it's that's how I do my liquid acrylic stuff, is I wash it out and then just build up the layers with the opacity and the more concentrated stuff. And then, same with the Copics. Like, what a cool and intuitive system. But with the Copics, I find, like, you really, like, when you're controlling that bleed, you really have to plan, like, how your transitions are going to work. Whereas with the liquid acrylic, that's impostering, like, or posing as watercolor, like, it just bleeds and fades and dries, and, like, you can always correct over top of it. The cool thing about the liquid acrylic is that the lights transfer really, like, the opacity is really easy to control over top of darks. So you can do, like, your highlights and your like defining lines even after it's all set up. Like, I salvaged the face on my Tubiac Maniac there because I left and I rushed it before I went to work, and the whole day I was at work, I was like, oh, it looks like crap. And then I came home and I was able to, like, adjust all the tonal range in it, and I'm, like, pseudo happy with it now. But yeah, so it's a really cool medium to play around with.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the cool things I really like about acrylics, because you're like, I don't like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can't do it. You can only do so much. You can only erase your paper so much before you just destroy the whole thing.
Totally.
Which was always the thing where even, like, I do some, like, a painting, I have to take to my wife and say, she's like, stop, and I was like, okay, and I'll stop, because as artists, we'll just keep tinkering and keep doing stuff, and, like,
Yeah.
if I tinker enough, I'll ruin stuff. But
Yeah, that's also kind of one of those benefits of having non-artistic people in your orbit, because when you share something and people are like, that's sick, like, and you're like, really? Because I'm thinking about it, and they're like, no, you're
that
good,
100%,
like,
yeah, you got that
yeah,
huge perfectionist syndrome where
yeah,
someone has to go enough, and that's what my wife, because my
yeah,
wife was like, it's great. I was like, no, but what about in the corner? You see, it's not. She's like, idiot, stop it. Like, put it down.
yeah,
No, you're done.
yeah. You add that lightning bolt, you're gonna fail.
Yeah, you're that one element more. You're like, just stop it.
Yeah.
But and I know. Well, getting back to Alex Ross, he does. Is it gouge or gouge? I don't know how to pronounce
Gauche.
it. Gouge.
I believe the Quebecois would call it gouche.
That's why I was like, it sounds very French, and I'm gonna butcher it,
Yeah.
but because I know, and that's kind of like that's like between watercolors. It's not quite watercolors, but it's almost like that, and
Hmm.
because it's like Alex Ross is like the standard for so many things. So everybody's, what's he using? It's like, oh, it's the stuff that is really kind of difficult to use. I'm like, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for sure. Well, same like really good airbrushes and stuff, right? Like the thing that sets like
Never gotten into
fantastic
airbrush.
artists apart. Well, me neither because it's expensive. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's the guys that like that do these things that like what people take for granted in Photoshop. Like when I first picked up my iPad and I was like, oh, sick. There's an airbrush like brush that I can use. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, but because it's something that I coveted for so long, and then I could play around with these crazy transitions and stuff. But like before you Procreate, before you Photoshop, before all this like this technology, like that it only got to that point. Like even like all the really cool graffiti brush sets and stuff, like those like tools were only built by people that have experience doing it in real life,
Right.
and so like I think that it's so
It,
important as an artist to be dirty and to like get the experience, like know what it's like to get so much pencil lead on your hand that like you get a skin infection because of it.
yes.
Like,
Yep. Yeah,
um
yeah. As a lefty, yeah, that's my life in general. But then when
yeah,
you start
yeah,
getting into charcoals and pastels and all that stuff, you're just like, yeah, it's funny you said that. I was like, yeah, been there, done that.
yeah, yeah, totally. Or like every tattoo artist who like or anybody who does spit shading can sympathize like that one time that you put the wrong brush in your mouth and then like you instantly regret all of your decisions.
Yeah, that one I'll
But
take your word for. But and
yeah.
it's funny you say that because that's it. Maybe it's slightly generational because that it going from the digital artist to there's almost like, yeah, you did that, but like you said, the airbrushing, you're like, but you didn't airbrush that, and there's kind of that
Mhm.
because you're like, that's always the balance of, getting back to like, you'll ruin it. You're like, because you can't ruin it because you can always just probably hit undo a few times and
Right, right.
you'll fix it.
Unless you're working on the same layer.
Right. Yeah. Right.
There's, I think, so what's interesting for me, because as a silver lining individual, like I very much look for the strength of everything. And so, where your experience in Procreate or Clip Studio or Photoshop might not necessarily be an analog application, I still see what your procedural application is, right? So, like, the fact that like that person took the time to put that love into their layers and their backgrounds and their letter selection and stuff, like yeah, it's not doing it the old fashioned way, but like keep it simple, stupid, right? Like why work hard when you can work smart? And some people like working hard because it has like a different feel to it. But I think that like even sometimes like the only thing that like that hybrid knows is just like how to apply certain things in certain ways that trick the eyes. Like I really like kayfabing images that look like pencil sketches on top of watercolor paintings, but I did it all in digital because it's like I just understand like how everything's supposed to look, to fool the viewer's eyes or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that like I think the part, and I think like this is a real easy like rack to hang your hat on, is like the AI generated art is where you get into like that real murky water. And I'm not like a doom and gloom fear the robots person or anything. I think that like the people that do it well will always be able to do it well for profit. um, I think that like uh, if you're storyboarding and you just need to generate like an idea for something, that's cool, because if you don't have like if a Nate wants to see a Super Wicked White Cell Squadron member where the mask looks like an owl, Nate can generate that on AI, and then he can show me, hey Doug, what do you think of this? That's cool, because it's like he's helping connect like the bridge between artist and writer to like try to like communicate that. But if Nate then writes the Super Wicked White Cell Squadron book drawn by AI, and says, "Hey Doug, do you love this?" I'm gonna be like, "No, no, I
No,
don't."
I kind of hate your guts, but I know what you're saying because I think for
Yeah.
real artists, I think your average artist is just going to go like, yeah, this is a tool in the toolbox, moving
Hmm.
forward. But yeah, there's always going to be the scumbags who are, this is my art. Be like,
Hmm.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
Everybody, and
Yeah.
I think the at least the artist community is gonna will know the real thing versus AI stuff. But hopefully you just kind of got to trust the audience to know better. And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. But because even like all the AI stuff I see, I'm almost getting to the point where I can just go AI, like without even because
Yeah,
it's almost got like a plasticky, too
yes.
shiny, rubbery look. Where I just go, yep, AI, yep, that's AI.
Yeah, all the art has BBLs.
Right.
Hey, the AI that I like recently is the Chihuahuas dressed up as different things or flying. That's entertaining to me. I will
Yeah,
repost
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I think that's like that's don't fear change. Like the things are going to progress and they're going to evolve, and we're going to experience moments of feeling insecure or inadequate. Like that's being an artist, right? Like as soon as you see somebody 10 years younger than you that's crushing it and getting big deals and stuff, you want to crawl into a hole or whatever, because why can't I? But the thing that I learned from a very early age is that, like, by holding yourself and your success to the standard of somebody else, you're never going to feel good about what your accomplishments are. And like, I'm so hard on myself that like it wasn't until I started assembling all my photos for my Kickstarter and stuff, and like social media growth or whatever, I was like, oh yeah, 2023 was a really cool year for me, but like, I can't drive. It's not my fault I can't drive, but like it doesn't do me any good to envy my neighbor Mike who can drive, which means he can go to more jobs or whatever, right? Like you can't sort that stuff out. And if you can't change things, then you can't fight them. And it's not worth the waste of the energy when you could just put it towards fixing the face on the Tubiac Maniac painting that I've got to finish when we're done talking,
Yeah, and I think it's a real interesting point because I think anybody who does anything like creative in the arts, recognizes the putting yourself out there. Like I always say it's like, here's my baby, be nice to it, please. And I think everybody kind of recognizes like, oh, like if someone's showing you some artistic thing, whether it's a piece of music, writing, literature, physical media art, like they're expressing a piece of themselves. And I think definitely artists, hopefully they're doing it with a little bit of tender loving care, where I think the average person, like, your art sucks, be like, you literally just said my soul sucks, thank you so much, now I'm gonna go crawl back to my hole. So but I
Jerry's.
what's that? Yes, exactly.
Just sit there and eat ice cream to fill up
with
the
my
hole.
Oreos and Ben and Jerry's, we're going back into the hole. So I think anybody creative kind of realizes, like, hopefully they realize, like, when they're putting themselves out there.
Yeah.
So and I think that's one of the things that's, like you said, like for myself, it's like, yeah, I'm posting some of my paintings online, and I think my first couple I posted, I was like, be gentle, with
Yeah.
your critiques, and people like, no, they're great and amazing, and I'm just like, but did you see the flaws that in the things? And everybody's like, dude, shut up, it's good, it's great.
Yeah. It's it comes to a point where I had a very interesting conversation in Buffalo, and the dude that I was talking to mentioned that, like, I'm doing the work that nobody wants to do, and that's like, you make the thing and then you have to like represent it so fully that like you recruit new people into like your squadron, and I think that just like that point where you're so like, I'm good with what I create. That's why I share it so freely now. And I don't care if it's a rough sketch or a finished or whatever. Like, if people want to say something negative, like that's their opinion. It's not going to affect me one way or another. When I was younger, I'd put up like a piece and like maybe be overconfident with it. And I would receive like negative feedback on it, and it would pit me, but like, recently I ran an ad and I totally missed the text box on it, and like somebody made a comment on it, and like instead of like deleting the comment that pointed it out or whatever. I messaged them privately. And I was like, "Hey, thanks for having my back on that because I totally missed it. And it wasn't an ironic and whatever or anything, right?" So it's about knowing that like you're not perfect, but you're having fun doing what you want to do, and and just like you're gonna learn. And if you don't learn, then just don't do that aspect of it and do something else and let somebody do the other stuff for you.
Yeah. Well, Doug, I think we've taken up enough of your time. Thank you so much. So where can people go support your books?
We've got Super Wicked White Cell Squadron 1, Chiasm 0, 1, and 2 are all available for sale digitally and physically at lesserknowncomics.com. And then I have the pre-launch page for Super Wicked White Cell Squadron 2 up on Kickstarter right now. We're going to launch that mid-May.
You didn't tell me.
I would. What's that?
I'm so sad. You didn't tell me the pre-launch page was up.
Yeah, you told me to add it to my link tree, you goof.
I quit. I quit.
So I would appreciate if people went and checked that out, because when I fulfill that, I'll be printing all of my books through there. What do you got? Yeah, there you go.
First one, but
that's the first one. Yeah, so you can go to kickstarter.com/project/crosseye-comics/squadron2, and that'll take you to that amazing campaign. So yeah, so head over to that, and then you can fulfill that, get art, and do all that stuff. So that's mid-May. So that's where I'm going to divert all my attention to right now, is to the Kickstarter pre-launch, and we'll keep building the buzz. Before we jump off, I'm going to tell everybody about my alignment with Comic Books for Kids. It's an incredible Chicago-based charity, and every quarter, Mark Weiss packs up like 100 cases of books and sends them to children's hospitals and cancer centers across North America. So we've had a conversation where every 75 copies of like the Squadron issue 1 or the coloring book that go to him, he's going to put one of each into each one of the cases that he packs. And so for me, it gets more books into more geographic locations, but it also guarantees that like it's going to go to the hands of somebody who really, especially, is going to be drawn to that book. And then it's not going to be like, 20 goodwill gestures that are sitting and collecting dust under like a secretary's desk who just doesn't even have time for it. So that's a really cool thing that I've got going on, that just is a great incentive for really backing and boosting the sale of the book, so I get more printed and do more good with what I've got going on.
No, that sounds like an amazing program. If the Comic-Con season's upon us, are there any shows you're going to be headed to?
Yeah, I am going to be at Thy Geekdom Con in Philly, and that's going to be May 2-4 weekend. And then I will be back at Nickel City this year. And then I'll also be doing the Hamilton show west of Toronto, which probably, I guess Hamilton and Buffalo are probably pretty similar distances for you, eh? Nick?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't go to Canada that often, but I think it's
I won't hold it against you.
Oh yeah.
And
we had the whole thing a couple years ago that made it difficult, so it's kind of like
yeah.
Here.
I call those the unspeakable years.
Yes.
Yeah, so then we've got, and then I'll be doing VonCon again, and then I've applied for a few other shows, and I potentially might be doing Terrificon in Connecticut. But as an indie artist, it's all about getting the funds to afford the dream chasing, and that only happens if I keep working and making money to pay my bills. So I'll see how it all shakes out.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. Had a lot of fun. Say if we can help you out in any way, just let us know.
If you want to do some nice words for Squadron 2, that'd be sick. Or awful words, I don't really care. A review's a review. That would be sick. And otherwise, man, it's just about spreading the word. Like, share, follow, comment, engage, and hopefully tonight I've made one more friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So go check out Cross-Eye Comics. So, all right, man. Thanks so much. And we'll definitely try and link up somewhere along the line. So, but once again, man, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, Nick, Nate, thanks so much, guys.
Right on. Thanks for coming.
All right, so we're gonna kick Doug. Thanks, man. That was fun. So, and thanks to Nate for hooking that up. So Doug
Right
Knight
on.
seems like a great guy, trying to do great things. Just based off his personal experiences. So that's awesome. And
I don't know if we were gonna rock and roll with some other stuff, but I gotta go take care of my kids here in a couple minutes because my wife's
it's about that time. So we'll
Okay.
wrap it up. So, all right. So if you want to check out what we're doing, me talk about a show, go check out our Facebook and Instagram. If you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, that helps out a lot. I think it's our first time. Didn't even say anything. First time broadcasting on X, so we can go check out what we're going to be doing on X as well. But if you like the podcast platform, you're on Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Google Podcasts. But other than that, let's wrap it up. Nate, any final words for you, sir?
Nope. Just Dune 2, kind of.
Dune 2, we're be doing a review here, hopefully over the weekend. So I'm not sure if you're gonna be check out over the weekend. I think Adam said he's gonna try and check it out, but that's my goal is to do a review show over the weekend as well.
And I heard that Zendaya shows up in an Iron Man suit, and then Kurt Russell blows her a kiss.
She's in a power suit, and she's all
Yes.
jacked.
Yes. And then Kurt Russell shows up, and then it's the end.
Hey,
Best movie ever.
Great, so, but also I think Christopher Walken's there too. So
20 Oscars.
Yes. Lock it up.
Best picture next 20 years in a row.
That's right. All right, Nate. Thanks so much for showing up today and helping out, getting all set up with Doug Knight over at Cross Eye Comics. And good night, America.
We miss you.